Hi everyone, it's Ali here with another songwriting lesson for you. In this video, I'm going to be talking about songwriting without music theory. If you've never learned any music theory, either because you've just not understood it in the past or you've just not really seen the point, but perhaps you've come to songwrite and you're struggling a bit and wondering whether theory could be helpful, in this lesson, I'm going to answer those questions and give you my top tips on songwriting without music theory. So what is music theory? Wait, don't close the video. I know that seems like a really stupid question, but actually it's not as stupid as it seems, because a lot of people have a complete misunderstanding of what music theory actually is. A lot of people think of music theory as just a load of rules, things telling them what they can and can't do when it comes to writing their songs. But actually that's not the point in music theory at all. Music theory is an analytical tool that's there to help us understand music. The music always comes first, and then you use the music theory to help you analyse the songs and work out what you do and don't like about them. If you think about music theory this way, it becomes a tool that can help you to grow as a songwriter rather than something that limits you creatively. I found this personally. As I've learnt theory over the years, I found it a lot easier to convey my ideas and to much quicker get to the ideas that I'm hearing in my head. What is music about ultimately? It's all about communicating. Communicating our emotions, our ideas, our unique perspectives. We don't need theory to help us do any of that. Since music is communication, probably the best way to think about this is to look at how we learn a language as we grow up. No one sits down and tries to teach a toddler how to construct sentences properly, or when and where they shouldn't use plurals and so on and so forth. They just learn by picking it up from the people they're around. They just keep speaking, keep trying, and people correct them as they go along until generally they get a grasp of the language. Later on in school, probably they start learning a lot more about how to construct sentences and so on and so forth. And that can be really helpful. Anyone that's a writer or has tried to learn a foreign language will tell you that it gets a lot easier if you understand how it was constructed and the theory behind it. But you certainly don't need it. You can go to another country quite easily and immerse yourself in the language, and you'll learn it over time. It might take you a bit longer, you might not understand necessarily what you're saying so much, but over time you will, and you'll pick it up and you won't have to worry so much about it, and you'll probably might even enjoy it a bit more. But you certainly don't need to do it. So is it possible to write great songs without any understanding of music theory? Yeah, it most definitely is. If you look at the Beatles as an example, Paul McCartney and John Lennon still hold the record for most number ones. Yet between them, they have no understanding of music theory. Yet if you analyse their music and listen to it, you'll see how incredibly complex some of it is, and how long it took music theory to actually catch up and explain their music. Paul McCartney has often stated that him and John Lennon would sit down and spend hours at the piano trying to find those ideas they were hearing in their heads. Perhaps if there's no music theory, they might have actually got there a bit quicker. At the same time, you could argue that had they known the music theory and got to the ideas they wanted to express quicker, that they might not have stumbled across a lot of other innovative ideas that they later used. If you take a look at a lot of other great musical innovators, Jimi Hendrix, Eric Clapton, Michael Jackson, Tony Williams, Danny Elfman, Kanye West, none of them had any understanding of music theory, yet they've all written groundbreaking music. Take someone like Jacob Collier, for example. He's an incredible musician who's writing some absolutely amazing music at the moment that's astounding musicians all over the world.
So negative harmony, it's funny, everyone's like freaking out about it. It's hilarious for me.
And the theory behind it is incredibly complex. But at the same time, he completely understands that it isn't the theory that makes a song great. It's how you express yourself emotionally. And he really knows that when it comes to actually writing the music, he has to forget about all the theory he knows and just express himself. What musical ideas actually express the emotion he's trying to convey to his audience?
Around when I made In My Room, I realised that in order to make an album that was more than what exists, what makes sense in my own head, which is often very, very crazy and complicated, I think I wanted to find the courage to put the information I'd gathered across my whole life just to one side for a second and then just write some songs. and inevitably what comes out is information, but my goal was to not build it from the information's point of view and to just try and let things flow out.
That's also the thing we need to think about, as I've said before. We need to just focus on that and not worry about the theory. So how is songwriting without music theory any different to songwriting with music theory? For the most part, I don't actually think it's any different. You still have to be creating ideas and being inspired to do so. You still have to follow your intuition, your taste, what sounds you hear in your head. But there are a few ways in which not understanding music theory will actually alter the way in which you write music. Firstly, it forces you to develop your ears. Now, you need to develop your ears whether you understand music theory or not. But if you don't understand theory, it's especially important. When it comes to writing songs, you're going to get to a point where you might be working on a chord sequence. Without theory, you're going to be basically just following trial and error and playing a chord and then saying, if I play this chord, what chord should follow? Should it be this chord? No, maybe not. Perhaps this chord? No, I'll try this one. Perhaps this chord. You'll have to keep going like that until you come up with sounds that you like. Theory can be a great guide in helping point you in the right direction, and without it, you'll rely on your intuition and your persistence a lot more. And frankly, there's nothing wrong with that. It can be perfectly fine to do that, and you will eventually get there as long as you're persistent. When it comes to learning from other songs, you'll use your ears and opinions a lot more to analyse the music than you would if you understood music theory. You'll need to ask yourself questions like, which part of this song connects with me the most emotionally? What's happening at this point in the song? What parts of the lyrics do I relate to? How does the music echo the feel of the lyrics? Listen to the chords and ask yourself, what are the melodies that I hear as I listen to this chord sequence? Where is the highest note in the song? How does the point at which the highest note is used emphasise the lyrics? Is the melody the same each verse? Does the melody use repeated phrases? Asking yourself questions like that will help your ears to learn what makes the music you like sound so good. All you then have to do is use that same knowledge when it comes to writing your own songs. And then afterwards, ask yourself the same questions about the songs you've written yourself. So we've talked about why you can write songs without music theory, but is there good reasons to learn music theory to help you songwrite? Yeah, so there definitely is, and it certainly doesn't hurt to learn music theory. Number one, I'd say it can be incredibly helpful to collaborate with other people if you can actually communicate using theory. It takes a lot of the guesswork out of it and a lot of the to and froing of trying to explain an idea, or perhaps having to keep playing ideas to people and hoping they'll understand what you mean. If you can just explain using the theory, it can make it a lot easier to actually collaborate with other people and make sure you're all on the same page when you're coming up with your ideas. Secondly, it gives us the opportunity to learn from other people's songs in a much deeper way. I've already talked about how you can ask yourself questions and just use your ears to analyse other people's songs, and you can certainly learn a lot from that. But some of the more difficult and complex ideas that you hear in other people's songs, we're probably not going to be able to borrow from those ideas if we don't understand the theory behind them. I talked about this in episode 2, about why I think it's so helpful to be able to analyse songs and why I think you should be doing it using theory. So if you haven't done already, I recommend going and checking that out. Third, theory is a really great way of pointing you in the right direction if you're stuck with an idea. Sometimes you might be working an idea, but you're starting to struggle to come up with that sound you hear in your head. You might start to get a little bit frustrated and impatient. Or perhaps you've just been working on an idea and you're trying to come up with the next section, but you've completely run out of ideas. Theory can be a really great thing to point you in the right direction and give you some new ideas to try out that you otherwise might not have thought of. You can ask yourself questions like, what would happen if I used a secondary dominant here? What would happen if I started this melody on the third rather than the root? What would happen if I borrowed a chord from the parallel mode? Or what would happen if I changed to a minor key for the chorus rather than staying in the major? All of these things can give you nice ideas with which to experiment with, and perhaps you'll come up with something new when you might have otherwise been stuck. Lastly, some styles of music can be incredibly difficult to write in if you don't understand music theory. Take jazz, for example. Although you can learn jazz quite easily just by listening and using your ears, when it comes to actually writing jazz, writing the chord sequences, all that kind of stuff, and the harmony, it can be really difficult to do if you don't understand the theory behind it. There was a lot of jazz to me that, without understanding the theory, just sounded like a complete mess. I didn't understand what was going on at all. And to be honest, didn't even want to listen to it, let alone want to write in it. But once I understood some of the theory behind it, it became a lot more interesting, and I could actually come up with some new ideas in that kind of style. And that was a lot more interesting to me, and probably wouldn't have been available to me had I not understood the theory. So those are just a few reasons why you might want to learn theory. But as I've kind of already said right at the beginning, you definitely don't need to. So don't feel like you've got to spend ages learning about theory to actually start writing songs. Just get started. You can write some great songs that can be incredibly simple without having to learn any theory whatsoever. That's it for this video today. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope it's encouraged you to just go and write some new songs. Thanks so much for watching. If you haven't done already, please hit the like button below and also subscribe. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you again in the next video.